Hey, sixth graders, this is Mrs. Zimmerman here. I've got a lesson for you today comparing decimals to decimals. So we're going to be looking at greater than, less than, and equal to signs and comparing two different decimals to see which one's going to be bigger. So here are my slides. I'm going to head to the front and we're going to get started. Right, so what I was saying is we are going to be using the greater than, less than, and equal to signs. So if you remember using these, they open up towards whichever number is bigger. So for example, if I had 12 and 8, well, which number is bigger? The 12, so we would have it open towards the 12, okay? Or if it was the other way around and we had like 3 and 10, this would be like 3 is less than 10. Okay, so hopefully you kind of remember how to use those symbols. And today we're going to take a look at decimals, comparing them. Okay, now the biggest thing to remember when you compare decimals is that you need to line them up. So here we have 75 and 8/10 and 0 and 9/100. So 75.8. And what we line up are the decimals. So I'm going to do 0.09. And what we do is we look at the place values. So we want to see in each place value which number is bigger. So here in the tens place, we have a 7 and nothing. So what's bigger, a 7 or nothing? A 7. So we know that 75 and 8/10 is going to be bigger. Let's look at the next one. We have 5 and 3/100 or 22 and 8/10. Now, the best way to do this is to fill in those zeros. I don't remember if I did this on the last one, but if you fill in those zeros, it's a lot easier to compare. So let's take a look at the 10 spot. I have a 0 and a 2. So which one's bigger? The 2 is, right? So I know my greater than sign is going to go towards the 22 because that one's bigger. Here's another one. We have 0 and 37/100 and 8 and 4/10. Now let's fill in the zeros and let's look at the tenths. Well, there are no tenths place, right? This is empty here, so we don't have anything in the tenths place. We have to look at the ones place, and there we have a 0 and an 8. So what's bigger, 0 or 8? We know that 8 is going to be bigger, so we know 8/10 is going to be bigger than 37/100. Okay, let's do this one. We have 0 and 3/100 and 0 and 5/10. So I'm going to, oh, sorry, I did that kind of fast. Okay, so this is what my decimals are, and I'm going to fill this in with a 0. Fill that empty spot, okay? So let's take a look at my place values. Oops, what happened? Here we are. Okay, so let's take a look at my place values. No 10s. In the one spot, I have 2 zeros. So is a 0 bigger than a 0? No, they're the same, right? So we have to go to the next spot, which would be my 10th spot, and I've got a 0 and a 5. So what's bigger, 0 or 5? Well, we know that the 5 is bigger, so 5/10 is bigger than 3/100. Here's another one, 40 and 8/10 and 71/100. I'm going to fill in my 2 zeros and let's take a look. Well, I've got a 4 and a 0 here in this first column of numbers. So what's bigger, 4 or 0? We know 4 is bigger, so we're going to use the greater than symbol. All right, here's another one. We've got 0 and 7/10, or hundredths, I guess, and that'd be 1 and 4/10, my bad. We're gonna fill this spot with a 0 and take a look at my place values. In the 1 spot, I have a 0 and a 1. So, what's bigger? We know 1 is bigger, so I'm going to use the less than symbol. Whoops. All right, here we go. We have 0 and 8/10 and 0 and 4/100. So, fill this spot in with a 0, and let's check our place values. I've got my zeros here, and then I've got 8 and a 0 in my 10th spot. What's bigger, 8 or 0? We know 8's going to be bigger, so that's the symbol I'm going to use, greater than. Okay, let's take a look at this one. I have 0 and 2/10 and 0 and 6/10. Now, this one here, I've got zeros in this column, right? So they don't matter. And here, I've got a 2 and a 6. So which one's going to be bigger? The 6. So we know we're going to use the less than symbol. And I think we got one more down here. 0 and 3/35 and 0 and 15/100. Grab my highlighter and let's take a look. My zeros are not going to matter, right? They cancel out. So I go to my 10th spot and I have 1 and a 3. So what's going to be bigger? The 3. So I know 35/100 is greater than 15/100. Okay? Let's take a look at one more. So what if I had something like this? Bunch of zeros. Okay, I have 8/100 and 3/1000. Let's line them up. And then I've got 0 and 3/1000. Okay, I'm going to fill in this spot with a 0, grab my highlighter, and let's check. My 1s, I have zeros, so they cancel out. My 10th place has zeros, so those are also going to cancel out. And then I'm going to look at my next column. So we're all the way over here in the hundreds, and that's where we're going to be comparing. So what's bigger, 8 or 0? We know 8 is bigger, so we know we're going to use the greater than symbol to say that the 8/100 is bigger than 3/1000. So I know that lesson was a little quick, but as long as you can remember to line up the decimals and just compare the numbers, you will be good to go.